Hey everyone, let's talk books. And today I have my monthly wrap up to share with you. June was a great reading month for me. At least I read more than I normally do because I had a lot of time to actually just sit and read. I also participated in Cramathon and I did pretty good. I completed all but the very last challenge, which was to read 7 books. So I read 6 books during a period of 1 week, which is really, really great. And then, of course, I read things before and after the readathon as well. So what I thought I'd do is basically go in order of the books I read this month. I'm going off of my Goodreads list because I've kept that pretty up to date this month. So let's get started because we have a lot of books to talk about this month. So the first book that I finished was Holiday in Death, which is by J.D. Robb or Nora Roberts. So it's Nora Roberts writing as J.D. Robb, and it's the In Death series. This is number 7 in the series. I've been reading them for a few months now, and I really, really enjoy. I'm not familiar with the series. I should say that it follows Detective Eve Dallas, who is a New York Police Department detective, and she's married to Rourke, who is one of the wealthiest men in the United States. It's set in like the year 2058 or something. This particular book centered around a series of murders that were connected to a dating service. I really like this book, actually. I like the mystery elements of it, and it was nice to sit with Eve Dallas and Rourke again. All right. After that, I did finish Midnight in Death, which is a little novella that goes in between books 7 and 8 of the In Death series. I didn't like the novella as much as I like the books. Right. So Holiday in Death for me was a 3-star book. The novella I gave 2 stars to because it was fine. The story had a lot of potential, but it picks up right where book 7 ends. And I felt like, my God, she needs a break. She's been chasing down this serial killer, and now she's got another murder. And oh, this guy's after, or is connected to her husband. I just didn't like the novella, and I usually don't like novellas. Like, I tend to just skip the novellas that get written about in series. So this just kind of solidified that I should just be skipping the novellas. Next book that I finished is Night Walking by Sarah Maas. So this is a book that I started months and months ago. We read it for my book club, and I never finished it. At the time, I was swamped with work. I was super busy, and I had not gone back to finish it. So I only got to like a third of it. So I did do most of the reading of it in June. But this is a book about a historian whose husband owns this like house in this like island in Britain, and they are on holiday there. She is kind of escaping kind of sexual harassment at the university, and she needs time to just sit and read. She really needs to get her manuscript out. She needs to sit down and write, but she has a small child and an infant that need a lot of care, and a lot of it is kind of her basically not having enough sleep and having to deal with the children, the husband who's not helping because he's prioritizing his career. And also, one day when they're gardening outside, they find the bones of an infant in their backyard. So she gets kind of sidetracked from her own research, and it begins kind of trying to figure out who this child would have belonged to and what happened to it. And so, because she is a historian of childhood in Britain, and so it does connect to what she's doing. But anyways, it's really interesting. I found that I connected way too much to this book in terms of the sleeplessness in it. So I rate it? I think, oh yeah, I gave it 3 stars because I found that it was good, but psychologically it kind of had a negative effect on me because I was already, when I started reading it, super tired and not getting enough sleep, and then I'm reading about somebody going through that, and that's part of the reason why I didn't finish it also. Like it just had a negative effect on me. So it's nothing against the book itself. It was just the reading experience of it. I didn't read it at the right time. So, anyways, 3 stars for that one. Next, I finally read a book that I have been including in like every readathon I had attempted, and I am glad I finally sat down and read it. It is The Smell of Other People's Houses, and it is a series of interconnected stories. Each chapter is told from a different person's perspective in a small town in Alaska. And it's through the perspectives of the children in this town. And I really, really enjoyed it. All the stories eventually do connect. And they're all there are themes across them. One of the themes is the smell of other people's houses, because one of the children says at one point, houses with mothers smell different than houses without mothers, which I thought was really interesting. I never really thought about it that way, but I thought that was a great perspective. I really enjoy the themes here about class and about family. It's really beautiful stories, guys. I highly recommend this book. It's a short one, and I haven't read anything set in Alaska in a while, and so it was a really interesting. So highly recommend it. I give this 5 stars. I enjoyed reading it so much, and it's one of those books that was hard for me to put down, because once I started reading it, I kept wanting to find out what is happening to these kids, because when one story ends, you kind of switch perspectives and you're like, but wait, but then you start reading the new child's perspective and you're like, oh, now I need to know what happens to this story. Anyways, highly enjoyed that one. The next book I read was The Girl in 6E, and this is a thriller. It's an erotic thriller. I did not know that it was an erotic thriller. I don't know how I did not know this. I think I had just ignored when I heard other people talking about it. But so know that it is about a cam girl. This girl has locked herself in her apartment, and she makes money by making videos online and taking her clothes off for people online. So the first, probably at least third, maybe half of the book kind of takes you inside her life, the kind of men that she meets online, and how she functions without leaving her home. The second book kind of focuses more on the thriller aspect of it, because part of the premise here is that I'll read you the back. It says, "My life is simple as long as I follow these rules. 1, don't leave the apartment. 2, never let anyone in. 3, don't kill anyone." That was all I needed to know. I wanted to read this book, and it turned out to be a really nice thriller. I did give it 4 stars because it was slow paced in certain aspects. Like once you get to kind of the climax of the story, the author takes you kind of down what I felt was a detour, and I was like, no, can we please focus on there's something happening here. But overall, I really enjoyed it. But be aware, she's a cam girl. You're gonna get scenes of her performing as a cam girl. So definitely an erotic thriller, but it was a fun one. Next book that I read was for. Did I read The Girl in 6E? Yeah, I think I read this one for Cramathon. Some of this is blending in, but for Cramathon, I did read Wonder Woman, The True Amazon, and this is an origin story of Wonder Woman. I really like Wonder Woman stories. If you haven't read Jill Lepore's The Secret History of Wonder Woman, I highly recommend it, because it goes through kind of the history of her creator. Marston is his last name, and he was very connected to the feminists and the birth control movement in the United States. And so for him, Wonder Woman is very much connected to that. But I digress. That's not what the graphic novel is about. The graphic novel tells a kind of a version of the origin story of Wonder Woman. I really liked it because it starts off with her as a child, and kind of the lesson she has to learn in order to eventually become Wonder Woman. And really nice. I did have some issues with it. Like I thought the artwork in here was really nice and all of that, but a lot of the Amazons are depicted as white, like their skin is light. Not all of them. There are some that are not, but I felt like the world of the Amazon is supposed to be a kind of utopia that is based on gender, but also race. Like there's supposed to be racial harmony here. That means like there should be more women of color. And I didn't visually see that represented in this particular graphic novel, and not a big deal in terms of my enjoyment of this particular graphic novel, but just it was a bit puzzling to me. Anyway, the next book, so I gave it 3 stars because I enjoyed the story element of it, but I thought there were certain things that could have been done a little better. So the next book that I read for Cravathon was The Hate You Give. I have been meaning to read this book for a long time, or for some time now, and it's won a bunch of awards. It was supposed to be really great, and everything everyone says about this is so true. It is a really, really good book. I give it 5 stars. It deals with a little girl, well, a teenager, Star. She is in the car when her friend is pulled over by a police officer, and the friend gets shot by the police officer. So she is the only eyewitness to the shooting, and it becomes a big issue in the community. And so all the book deals with the aftermath. What happens after the police shooting of a young black man, and what happened, a young eyewitness of it. It's not, I didn't feel like the book was preachy because it doesn't present the story in black and white. This is the lesson you should take from it. No, I think it presents nuance, but it does ask you to view things from the perspective of the black community, right? And the kinds of struggles and issues that are faced by black communities, especially the things that come to the surface when there's a shooting of a young black man by a white police officer. So very timely. This is definitely things that we are discussing in society, and I think it's important to have this perspective, especially from this children's perspective. So highly recommend it. Pick it up. I think it's a good one. Okay, next I read Robopocalypse by Daniel H. Wilson. Robopocalypse tells the story of the world at war with robots. Yes, I know you're thinking Terminator. Basically, Skynet has become aware, and Skynet has taken over and is using robots against humanity. Except it's not Skynet. It takes a slightly different perspective than Terminator, right? This is about the war between humans and robots, and it kind of takes you through the story. The story begins with towards the end of the war, and then goes back very quickly and tells you the story of the war through different perspectives and through different what become key people in this war. I really, really enjoyed it. It was kind of dark and creepy, and I was reading it at night. I did end up one night just having nightmares all night. Not necessarily about a robot, but I know those nightmares were triggered by this book because I had been up reading this. But I found it very enjoyable. I gave it, what did I give it? I gave it 5 stars. That's how much I enjoyed it. Looking back, maybe it's more of a 4.5 stars. There's a sequel to it that I'm definitely gonna get to, because I felt very much immersed in this world while I was reading it. I felt invested in all the characters. There were very few times when I felt like, like there was a lull in the story. I felt like everything kind of kept going at a very nice pace. There were really interesting elements. If you're into kind of fantasy and sci-fi, I think you would enjoy this book. There are some things in here that are probably repetitive in not that original in terms of the genre. But despite that, I thought it was told in a very interesting way. It actually reminded me a lot of the way that World War C is told, in terms of here's the history of this war. This is a kind of like oral history of this the robot wars, and I really enjoyed it as a historian. I thought that element was really nice. I enjoyed World War C too, though. So maybe if you didn't enjoy those books, if you don't enjoy that genre, then maybe this one's not for you. So the next one that I read is a memoir. It's called Spoiler Alert: The Hero Dies, by Michael Ausiello. Michael Ausiello is an entertainment writer, or was an entertainment writer, then editor, and now he runs his own website, TV Line. And talking about television, movies, entertainment, and his writing is really brilliant. I've been following him for over 10 years. I first discovered him when he was working at TV Guide. And then he went on to Entertainment Weekly, and now now he's at TV Line. But this is a memoir of basically his relationship with Kit. Who he ends up marrying, and who is diagnosed with cancer. The title tells you what's going to happen. If you follow him, you know that his partner dies. He shared that with on social media, and I didn't know anything about his relationship and or his personal life, and I thought this was a really well done memoir because it's raw. The story is emotional, but he doesn't just like play those notes to play them, right? He's not like, oh, here you're gonna cry. No, he's just telling you the story of this relationship. Like, it's not all about how great his partner was, right? It's about kind of, the struggles that they went through as a couple, and eventually a cancer diagnosis being one of those final struggles. So I felt he was very honest in here. He's also very funny. I knew he was a funny, witty writer, and that definitely came through here, which is kind of a necessary element when you're dealing with kind of a very hard topic like cancer and death. And I thought he did it really brilliantly. At the end, I couldn't stop crying. I think knowing that the story is real and that these are real people kind of makes you more emotionally invested in it, even though you know what's going to happen. But I really, really enjoyed this memoir, and I am glad that I finally got to it because I've been meaning to read it ever since it came out. Alright, the next book I read, I was kind of in an emotional kick, was Journey's End by R.C. Sheriff, and this is a World War I play. So this was another one of the challenges of Cramathon, because this is out of my comfort zone. I like to think that there are very few genres out of my comfort zone, but plays are definitely out of my comfort zone. World War I stories are not, however, so that's why I picked this one. It's a very short play. It's all set in the trenches of World War I, and a group of soldiers that is asked to go out on basically a suicide mission. So a lot of it is dealing with the trauma of World War I and the ways in which trench warfare affected individual soldiers. Right. So if you're into plays, this was I think people would enjoy it. It took me a while because this wasn't a format I'm used to reading. It took me quite a while to get into the story because you're like reading the names and like, it's just not a format I'm used to. But eventually I did get into the story and I became invested in the men and their experience. So this was a 3-star read for me. Alright, the next book that I told you I read a lot, that I read is They Both Die at the End by Adam Silvera. It's a YA book, and I gave this. Did I give this? I gave this 4 stars. I really, really enjoyed the story. It tells the story of two kids, Mateo and Rufus, and they meet because they live in a world that's like ours, except they know when people are going to die. You get a 24-hour notice, and you get a call, and they tell you, hey, you've got 24 hours to live. Here's some resources. Bye. So it kind of touches a little bit on the kind of consumerism that emerges out of a world that exists in which you get told, you get given 24 hours notice of your death. One of the things that has occurred is there's an app that connects people that are living their last 24 hours. So these two kids meet on that app, and then they meet in real life, and they spend their last day together. I really enjoyed the story a ton. I didn't give it 5 stars only because I felt like I was not necessarily the target audience for it. Like, there were some things in here that were clearly geared towards young adults, and that's perfectly fine. It's a young adult novel, but I did feel a little bit disconnected from certain elements. There were some lulls in the story where you kind of just wanted to pick up a little. But Adam Silvera was very good at kind of building tension of, you know what's going to happen. And it's like any moment around the corner, like the deaths will occur, right? And so I thought he was very good at doing that. I really liked the two main characters. The next book I read was Erotic Stories for Punjabi Widows by Bayi Kaur Jaswal. I hope I said that right. I gave this one 4 stars. This is the book that I read for my book club in the month of June. It was such a fun story. It is kind of dealing with an immigrant community of Punjabis in London, and specifically about kind of this group of older women that are widows and have basically been written off by the community, but they kind of come together around a writing class that they all decide to take from this young woman who is kind of trying to find herself in the world and navigate the world of her kind of traditional parents and the modern world that London offers and in which she's grown up in. Really enjoyed it. I give it 4 stars, I think, because it's an immigrant story that like, it's not a very serious story. There are serious elements in it. There's a little bit of mystery in it, and I thought that was a little bit odd. I won't lie, it was a little bit odd the way some of that was written, but it was super enjoyable. There are actual erotic stories in here, so you read kind of the stories that these women are actually writing, and that's fun. If you're not into that though, if you're like, I don't want to read sex scenes, they're very easy to skip, because the minute you get into the story, it's written in a different font. So they're super easy to skip, and it doesn't take away from the enjoyment of the story if you skip it. I didn't feel like at all. So really fun book. I felt. Next up, Size 12 and Ready to Rock. This is a Heather Wells book. I think this is the second to last in the Heather Wells series by Meg Cabot. This is super fun. I give it 3 stars because I'm really enjoying the Heather Wells series. It's not a serious story. It's about a former pop star who is assistant director at a residence hall, aka dorm, at a university in New York, and there are murders, and she helps solve them. It has become another one of those kind of like comfort foodie books where, like, I want to read, and I don't want to read anything too serious. I just want to escape for a little while, and that's the way that this has served for me. My library also finally got a bunch of holds to me. One of those was Big Little Lies by Leon Moriarty. I was so not in the mood for this book, but because I needed to be sent back to the library, I only had 21 days to read it, so I ended up reading it. I ended up really enjoying it. I haven't given it a star rating on Goodreads. I would give it a 3 stars. I think I enjoyed the story. It's about a suburban community and this group of mothers who are all sending their kids to kindergarten, and the kind of drama and secrets that exist in that kind of community, right? So lots of drama. The story is told in a very interesting way in that something happened at the very beginning. The police are involved. Something has happened, and there are little snippets of like the police interviewing the different parents. And then the story gets told from the perspective primarily of three women. And you follow them from like the beginning of the kindergarten year to when the incident happens, and the whole time you're supposed to be piecing together what happened. Some of that I didn't feel it was necessary. Like some of it was kind of cool, and neat way of telling the story. At other times I felt like that was super annoying and like, let's just get on with it. I have not watched the TV show, but I will. This is made into a series, I think, for like HBO or Showtime, one of those networks. But I am interested enough to want to watch the TV show, and I did generally enjoy the book. Some things I did feel like were handled a little bit superficially, could have been better handled in the story, but overall it's an enjoyable book and kept me interested enough to finish reading it. So that was great. Next up, I read Murder, She Barked. This is a cozy mystery, and it's #1 in the Paws and Claws mystery series by Krista Davis. I grabbed it from the bookstore because it's about dogs, and I really wanted to kind of get back into cozy mysteries. I used to read cozy mysteries a lot when I was younger, but it's been years and years since I picked up a cozy mystery. I gave this one 3 stars. It was enjoyable, but there were elements in here that I wish had been better done. It's not a deep book. It's not supposed to be a very deep book, but I kind of wanted a little bit more of the dog element, which is a weird thing to say. Like the setting is in a town that has been turned into a kind of dog resort where people can go vacation with their dogs and everything's super dog friendly. I wanted more dog. I love dogs, so I guess it was a pretty decent cozy mystery. I don't know if I'll continue with this particular series, but I'm definitely gonna give other cozy mysteries a try. The last book that I finished is The Curious Incident of the Dog in Nighttime by Mark Haddon. This was another one of those books that I finally got, that I had to hold on from the library. The story is told from the perspective of a kid. He's a teenager, but he, let me see, his name's Christopher. He is on the spectrum, I believe is what's happening with him. And so he doesn't relate to people and to social customs in the same way that like the general public does, right? So it was really interesting to read a whole book from the perspective. He is a really brilliant kid. Like, he's brilliant at math, and he's brilliant at certain things, but he just like doesn't understand certain things. Like he can't really read facial expressions very well, and the book goes through a lot of effort to kind of try to explain to you how he's viewing things, what things he's understanding, and what things he's just not getting, right? And I don't know how well that's done, because I don't have a whole lot of experience with that, so I don't know if the rep is good on this in this book. The things that happen in the story a lot have to do with like his parents, his family life, and that wasn't that interesting to me. So I'm giving this book 2 stars in that I felt it tried to do something really good. I don't know how good it did it. In terms of a story, though, it didn't work for me. So that's just me. I'm sure there are other people who would really enjoy it. It just was not for me. So that's it. That's all the books that I finished in the month of June. It was a good reading month for me. I think I read a wide variety of books. I read some really great stuff. And I'm probably going to do a little less reading than I did in June and July, but I still hope to get quite a bit done in July. So anyway, let me know if you've read any of these books and if you agree with my assessment of them, and if you don't, that's totally fine. We all have different experiences with these books. I just kind of want to know what everybody thinks, so it'd be great if you read any of these or want to read any of these, if you let me know down below. But thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!